Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on the Pathfinder role-playing game system. I was talking about the environments and adventuring, everything to do with that. We've begun talking about weather. Today I'm going to handle the rest of weather with two things: storms and wind, which technically go hand in hand, but I will treat them separately in this case. Let's talk about the basics of storms. Storms tend to be very severe winds, heavy rain coming down. It can also be dust in it. It basically gives material flying into your face, interfering with vision, howling winds, blowing you around, terrible conditions, all in all. You will have 3/4 normal range of visibility, -8 to any perception checks you're going to have. Ranged attacks are actually impossible in this type of weather, except for siege weapons, which get -4 to hit. Unprotected flames go out. Protected flames, like something in a lantern, you have a 50% chance of it going out still in the course of this weather, just because it's so pounding. Now, there are more wind effects that you're going to have related to the wind portion of it. There's a chart in the book you can check related to different types of winds. I will talk a little bit more about those types of winds, but for game terms, what that wind is going to be do to you, check the chart. Now, there are 3 types of basic storms you can encounter. First off is the dust storm. This is actually a CR3 encounter, basically. So this is no precipitation. It's all fine sand and dust that is blowing around, but has the exact same effect as being in the basic storm rules. So, of course, you're going to be interfering with your perception, not going to be able to use ranged attacks, and unprotected fires are going to go out right away. Protected 50% chance. The result, you also have to worry about sort of getting it choking, kind of causing you problems breathing, but it's more of a long-term thing. You can usually protect yourself pretty well in just a normal dust storm. It's going to leave about 1d6 inches of a fine dust, fine sand, over everything. There is a 10% chance that the winds kick up to windstorm level, rather than just more of a severe level. This is a greater windstorm. This has much greater effects. You take 1d2 points of non-lethal damage each round you are out in this sand. If you're in protection, you're alright, but as long as you're facing the sand, it's going to pelt into you, dealing damage. You also have to worry about choking. If your nose and mouth do not have protection in it, you have to worry effectively hitting the drowning and choking rules, because it is shoving sand into you that you cannot resist almost. If you have protection, it gives you about 10 plus your constitution modifier rounds of protection before you have to worry about starting to choke. It will leave 2d3 feet of sand behind, of dust and sand, wherever it goes to. So this is an intense storm. Now, a snowstorm, it just has some precipitation, it has some wind. It will leave about a d6 inches of snow wherever it travels through. A thunderstorm, on the other hand, is going to be winds, rain, maybe hail, and lightning bolts. About once per minute, for the course of about an hour, you have to deal with lightning bolts hitting an area. They will do between 48 to 10d8 points of damage. The thing about thunderstorms is there's a 10% chance of when you have a thunderstorm, a tornado occurs during it. So then you'd have to worry about a tornado also. Greater storms. Let's talk about those then. Now, greater storms, they're going to have torrential rain or precipitation. They're going to have much more powerful winds, effects that are just going to hammer down upon you. Perception of any kind is really impossible in these situations, and so is ranged attacks. Even protective flames have a 75% chance of going out. And more often than not, at these wind speeds, you're going to have to be making fortitude saves related to the wind effects that will be going on. Again, going to that chart. There are 4 types of powerful storms. First off is a windstorm. Windstorm's unique that it has little to no precipitation. So you do have an advantage that, hey, your visual perception isn't really interfered with. On the other hand, you're not going to be hearing anything. Blizzard's going to be high wind and heavy snow, leaving about a d3 feet of snow at very least, and also you having to deal with bitter cold that you're encountering. Hurricanes, torrential rain, fast winds, hurricane force winds. And of course, flooding everywhere. This is what knocks down trees, causes damage to buildings. Venturing tends to be impossible during a hurricane. Beyond that is the tornado, a CR10 encounter, should you run into one more directly. This has such high winds, it destroys everything in its path. You're not going to hear anything. You're not going to have ranged attacks. All you're going to have to do is worry about the funnel. It injures and kills. I'll talk a little bit more about tornadoes when I talk about wind speeds of that amount. Now let's talk about fog briefly. Sort of a juxtaposition in between storms and wind is fog. It's a cloud at the ground or mist. Fog blocks vision. Effectively, you can only perceive about 5 feet in front of you, and even then, when you're perceiving 5 feet in front of you, it has concealment. So fog just makes it hard for you to see where you're going any long-term, period. Let's talk about winds. Because wind can have a variety of effects depending on how powerful it is, from putting out flames, to knocking down trees, to knocking over buildings at the highest speeds. Now, if you have a light wind, that's what it is. It's a gentle breeze, and it has little to no game effects whatsoever. Now, moderate wind, if you encounter it, has a 50% chance of putting out an unprotected flame. A strong wind automatically puts out an unprotected flame, and ranged attacks have a -2, and you also have a -2 to auditory-based perception, hearing-based perception. Now we get into severe. Severe automatically puts out, of course, unprotected flames, and even protected flames now have a 50% chance of going out. This is the point where we have a -4 to all ranged attacks in this sort of weather, and to any hearing-based perception. This is effectively what a gust of wind spell would be. Severe wind. At a windstorm, well, we've upgraded the protected flames to 75% chance of going out. Normal ranged attacks are impossible. Siege weapon attacks have a -4 to them. And you effectively now have a -8 to any hearing-based perception checks, because the wind is howling so much. Hurricane. All flames go out at the power of a hurricane, even protected ones. And normal ranged attacks are impossible. You could possibly get some siege weapon attacks, but they are at -8. And any hearing-based perception is also impossible. You will not hear anything within the howls of a hurricane. Let's finish with tornado and tornado-based winds. That's that CR10 I was talking about. You're not going to have any fires, no flames. No ranged attacks of any kind will survive it. You will not hear anything under the roar of a tornado. And you have to worry about it getting near you. First off, you might have to make fortitude saves not to be blown and sucked up into it. Or it could run into you itself, and then you would also be sucked up into it. Regardless of how you are devoured by the funnel of a tornado, you are in there for 1d10 rounds. And each round you are in there, you take 6d6 points of damage, until, after that time is up, it forcefully ejects you. Traditionally at some form of height, meaning that you will probably also then take fall damage as a result of everything occurring with you and this. Now, a hurricane itself travels at about 30 miles per hour. That's approximately a speed of 250 feet if you're using a board. That's how fast it just swafts through everything and could possibly catch up to your character and just engulf them in it. Unless they can somehow find protection. Because tornadoes destroy trees, buildings, pretty much everything in their path. That's a good way of describing it. Everything in their path. So that's it for today. I finished talking about weather. I first talk about storms. The 7 types of storms. The 3 normal storms and the 4 powerful storms. None of which you really want to encounter if you're adventuring. They will interfere with your ability to adventure. Some might stop it. Others just might be a deterrent. I talked about fog briefly before I moved into wind. I talked about the levels of wind, which I did say there is a chart describing the numerical, the stat-based effects, the main ones of that wind. But I didn't talk about the basics of each of them, what it means to them in respect to flames, ranged attacks, and hearing stuff. all up to a tornado, which just goes through everything. In the next episode, I'm going to start talking about the multiverse and planes when it comes to Pathfinder. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows you support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.